If you watched my previous video a few weeks ago when I just found out about World Watercolour Month, welcome back. And I've done a few. I didn't follow the full list of prompts, and I didn't find out about it until after the first week anyway. And in my previous video I just showed a few of the bits that I'd done in watercolour, which were not technically part of the World Watercolour Month because I didn't know about it at the start. So that one was fine. This is one of the ones which wasn't finished before. I kind of had half the page done. So I finished off with drawing and painting my new fountain pen, which was an extremely cheap pen from Temu. But I actually really like it, like despite the fact that it's so cheap. I actually really like how it works, and I've done a few experiments with a few more experiments since with using just the pen and the water brush, which I quite like, but that's not for this video. And then the other one which I showed you, which was unfinished, was my orchids. So I'm really happy with these couple of pages. I think I mentioned before that this initial sketch was done using Inktense pencils, but then most of the rest of it has been done with just straightforward watercolour. Apart from the red background, I carried that on with the Inktense, but it was just the stages of the bud opening and the flower opening. I won't go into too much detail about that, but yeah, that's what I did, and I say I'm really happy with those pages. And then I actually started the World Watercolour Month and looking at some of the prompts. So I didn't do many. The first one I did was prompt 8, obviously on the 8th, which was mechanism. And I did this kind of winch thing. I don't even know what it is. It's some kind of piece of machinery that's usually sort of seen kind of seaside sort of areas. So I'm guessing it's a winch for winding up, like bringing boats in maybe. I'm not too sure. It's just whenever I've seen these kind of things when I've been on holiday, I've always just really liked the look of them. This particular one was just copied from an image that I found online. And then prompt 10 was clutter, and this was a genuine pile. It wasn't staged. This was where I just had a few kind of art and craft supplies that I'd been using in my living room, and they just ended up in a heap on my rocking chair, just waiting to be taken upstairs to be put away. They have since been put away. And then prompt 14, I have actually got prompt 11 on the next page, but that was a bigger one, so we've got 8, 10 and 14 on this page. Aubergine. Now obviously this isn't the standard aubergine colour, but I've always been fascinated by the different words that are used in different parts of the world for the same thing. And as I'm in England, I'm particularly fascinated by the difference between English and American English, and the fact that they would normally call an aubergine an eggplant. And I was always like, why on earth would you call it an eggplant? Like, looking at the colour of an aubergine, why on earth would you call it an eggplant? And then I'd seen a photo of these white aubergines growing, and I thought, oh, they really do look like eggs growing on a plant. And I thought, okay, so now I see eggplant makes sense, and now I'm thinking, why on earth do we call it an aubergine? But anyway, that was my weird long-winded explanation of my white aubergines. And then the rather unusual one that I did for prompt 11, the prompt was element. And initially what I'd planned to do was to have a look at the periodic table and pick out an element and then draw something representing that element. But then when I looked at various versions of the periodic table, I thought, well, actually the table itself is really quite pretty with the colour, and it's kind of fascinating with the layout, and I was surprised how many different versions there are. I mean, this one that I've done has got 9 different colours representing the different types of elements, but some of them only had like 3 or 4, and then there were others that had lots more kind of subcategories of different types of elements, but I just picked this particular one. I did get a little bit confused with these ones at the end, because I started copying from one chart and then I found a mistake in it, the one I was copying. So then I looked at a different chart and it actually had different references. So these last few elements on the chart have actually got 2 different names and 2 different abbreviations, depending on which table you look at. I don't know which is correct. I'm guessing one is an old version and one's a new version. But anyway, that wasn't really relevant for what I was particularly doing. I've just always been quite fascinated with the periodic table, and yeah, so there you go. I've now got my own. The other thing which I did think about doing was, because this was prompt 11, and then I thought, oh, element that's number 11 is sodium. So I had thought about just drawing a salt pot to represent sodium, but I didn't do that in the end. I've just got the table. And then there were just a couple more that I did. So prompt 16 was recycle, and I've done a painting of this other book which I've made. As you can see, the colour is not great, and I really struggled to get that texture. It's that kind of fake bumpy leather sort of texture, and I just kind of did blobs. I didn't really know how to represent that texture, but anyway, the reason I've got this down for recycle is because the actual paper is made from recycled cups, so the like sort of disposable coffee cups that you get. That's actually what the paper's made out of, or at least partly anyway. And then the card that I used for the hard covers is kind of made from the middle sections that have been cut out of a mount board. So yeah, so there were a few different elements of that particular book which I felt were appropriate for the prompt recycle. And then the last one that I've done is this one, which is local. Now, I don't know if this is a word that has different connotations in different parts of the world, but in the UK, if somebody refers to my local, they're normally talking about the pub. Usually the pub which is near where they live, or the one that they go to frequently. Well, this is a pub which is very close to where I live. It's only like a 5-minute walk from where I live, but I've probably only been inside it, I don't know, 3 times that I can remember. So I say maybe 4 or 5 times at the most that I've ever been inside this pub. But I'm just fascinated by the building. It's got such kind of quirky angles on the roof. So I know it sounds weird, but I've been wanting to draw this pub for ages. Just along sort of this side is a car park, and there's a little shop just further along. So whenever if I pull in here on my way home from somewhere to go to the shop, and I kind of park looking at this view of the pub, I quite often think, well, I'll draw that one day. And I never do, because it's kind of one of those things where I would feel a bit of a wally to go and sit in the car park to draw a pub. But because this prompt came up for local, and I immediately thought of, oh, this is my opportunity to do this pub. I actually got a photo of it online, which is stupid, I know, because it's literally a 5-minute walk from my house. But like I say, I didn't want to go and sit in the pub car park and do a painting of it. So I just did this sat at home with an image from Google Maps or from the Street View. So there you go. That's the extent of what I did for the actual official prompts that were part of the World Watercolour Month. So how many did I do? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I only did 6 of the 31 official prompts, and then as you saw there were a couple of watercolours that I'd done before I found out about the challenge. But this little book that I already showed you, around the middle of July I set myself another crazy project. In my town at the moment there's a display of dog sculptures. So it's called the Big Dog Art Trail, and basically there's a total of 72 dog sculptures which are shaped like balloon dogs, and then they've been decorated by different artists. So there are 3 big ones which have been sort of individually decorated by particular artists, and then there are 42 small ones which I believe have all been done by school children or groups, like community groups and things like that. And the purpose of this art trail is to raise money for a local children's hospice. So I decided in the middle of doing World Watercolour Month that I would make this book, and I deliberately made it small so to kind of make it a little bit easier for myself, that I would go round and paint or sketch all of the bigger dogs. So the 30 big ones, I've set myself this goal. Hang on, let me zoom in so you can see this a bit better. So there's a map of the town which shows where all the sculptures are, and I decided that I'd try and draw them in the same order that they're listed on the map, just so that there was some kind of pattern to how I was doing it. And so far I've done 7, well, 6 3/4 of the dogs. So when all 30 are done, I'll do a separate video just showing all the dog paintings that I've done. But as most of the ones I've done so far are with watercolour, it just seemed appropriate to include them in this video because I did them in July, which was the World Watercolour Month. So this first one was outside a community centre, and I'd sketched it and started painting it, and then it started raining. So I actually then moved inside the community centre, and I actually finished it off copying from a photo on my phone. So I was still sort of on location, but also copying from a photo because I was inside the building. And then these two, very different. I love this one, although it doesn't really count because I did this with ink tents. It was just so bright and shiny, it was just perfect for the ink tents. And then this one, which is watercolour, it's called Spike because obviously it's supposed to be like a cactus in a painted pot. I really like this one actually. And then this one is outside our local football stadium, and it's called Dog Rogers because in the 60s and 70s one of the local footballers was Don Rogers, and he's still like a well-known name and sort of personality in the town. And this is the first one that I did multiple views of because I wanted to show his football kit, but he was also the first one that had actually had a face, because the others, I mean obviously they've got a head, but there's no like facial features. So this was the first one that actually had a cute little face. So I wanted to draw his face, but I also wanted to draw the the football kit, so that's why I decided to do 2 views of this one. So I did the main one actually on site, and then I did his head back at home from a photo. So this is all watercolour, apart from the grass in the background is watercolour pencil. And then these two, this one is watercolour pencil, and I was not happy with that one at all. I tried doing it without harsh outlines and it looked too wishy-washy. So then I put the outlines in and then it looked too harsh, and I just really not happy with that one. But as that was watercolour pencil anyway, we won't worry about that today. And this one, I love this one so much. There were so many details on this dog. Every angle you looked at it from was just amazing, and I was walking around for ages before I decided what angle to draw it from. On the side here it said love grows, and then on the opposite side it said keep growing, and there were lots of different little animals and insects and flowers, and it was just lovely. And every single leaf had like a word on it, so from a little bit of a distance it looked like a pale vein on the leaf, but then when you got up close it was actually words on every leaf. So it was sort of, you know, like uplifting, encouraging words. Really, really lovely. So much thought must have gone into it. But because I couldn't do, you know, I couldn't show everything from that angle, I decided that I'd do some of the animals separately. So hedgehogs are my favourite animal, so the hedgehog had to have a bigger space. And then I just used some thin washi tape just to divide up the other sections to do some of the other animals. And then I just used a white gel pen for the little highlights in their eyes, because a few of those had got lost when I was painting. And then this is the last one that I've been working on. This is my it's the 7th one. This is what I meant about 6 3/4 because the dog itself is mostly finished. I do want to add a few more details, and there were some gold highlights on there, so I want to add some gold on, but the watercolour part of it is basically done, I think, for the dog. And then these other animals were on various parts that you can't see from this angle, so obviously I want to paint those as well. Hopefully once it's painted my little monkey will look less freaky. It's quite scary looking in that one. The cat looks really angry, but I'm happy with the deer so far. So we'll see in a future video once I've finished painting all the dogs. Hopefully you'll come back and see, and you'll see then, you know, what I managed to do to retrieve these animals. So I hope you've enjoyed seeing what bits of watercolour I've done during July, the World Watercolour Month, which I'd never heard of before. Did you take part? Did you do any watercolour this month, either deliberately for that challenge or just in general? I'd love to hear what you've been up to, and hopefully I will see you soon in the next video. Bye!